we continue with the class. We end up the last section by looking at what Joseph Pieper says. So the first point to helping us to keep understanding what philosophy is one, it looks at the totality of reality. So it doesn't focus on a particular part. Okay, that is one. Secondly, it looks at the ultimate questions of reality. Okay, the fundamental problematics, if you like. So now what we're going to do at this section is to now see what I have given the 4 different ways or aspects of responding to this question, what is philosophy, in the history of the philosophical attitude or activities of the human person or human beings. So the first one is this: philosophy as worldview. Okay, so there's philosophy as worldview. That's the first one. So when we say now philosophy as worldview is a very general way of understanding what philosophy is. So philosophy is seen as a people's culture and value systems. You know, as people cultures and value systems. As you know, philosophy in this sense is equal to worldview of a particular people. So how the Chinese people conceive their moral values or system, their cultural way of seeing life or death, or family or social harmony, or understanding how everything came to be. So worldview, people's worldview. So in this sense, philosophy is almost like religion. It's a part of just the way people try to understand the realities around them, what they experience. So that is the first way of people responding to the question, what is philosophy? Okay. So this way of responding to the question, what is philosophy as worldview, you know, focuses on the peculiar experience of a given people or nation or culture. So, for example, the Western or the Asian or the African, you know, or even you can break it down now. So, okay, the Japanese, you know, cultural view about, you know, morals, about life, about being a good person, about the existence of things. So it's focused on the peculiar experience of a people. And so when that is why sometimes we say European philosophy, Asian philosophy, African philosophy. Broadly speaking, what we are saying, of course, there's Latin American philosophy and so on. Arab philosophy, you know. Even like even Christian philosophy, Islamic philosophy, Buddhist philosophy. You know, when it just, in this sense, when we say this kind of thing, we are like, how this group of people or those who share this persuasion, how they collectively understand or interpret their lived experience, the realities around them. So that is, so you can say that in this sense, philosophy is everywhere, is in every culture, is in every tradition, is in every, you know, human history. So in this sense, philosophy is very close but not the same with myth, and it's not the same with religion, but very close to religion. And at the same time, it's also not the same. It's not the same, but very close to what we can call science today. These are the available, epistemic, tools, rational way of trying to understand the realities around them. Okay, so that is philosophy as worldview. And it is very close to what especially developed in African contemporary African philosophical tradition, the concept of ethnophilosophy, where a philosophical thought or view is that of a given ethnic group, so in other words, the kind of a worldview of a particular people. Okay, and then you can find that either articulated in proverbs, articulated in using idioms, or in mythological expressions, in arts, in using artworks, and many other ways whereby people try to articulate either symbolically or more abstractly their view about their experience of reality. So that's the first way of seeing philosophy. Okay, philosophy as worldview. Okay, so now the second way of responding to the question what is philosophy as the love of wisdom. This is simply from the etymology of the English word philosophy. The English word philosophy is from the Greek, two Greek terms, philosophia, philosophia. So this is the term philo in English means love. That is where you have philia, so filial relationship, filial love. So philo is from the root Greek word in English which means love. Okay, a special kind of love. So, and then Sophia from the ancient Greek, it signifies wisdom. A special kind of wisdom, a special kind of knowledge. A special kind of knowledge, which is wisdom. So, and therefore, so philosophy, just from the etymology, it means the love of wisdom. So anyone who loves wisdom, anyone who loves Sophia. So we are going to explain, this wisdom, this kind of knowledge, what kind of knowledge is called or is signified with the term wisdom in this context. So, so the philosopher is the one who loves this kind of knowledge. The philosopher is the one who loves Sophia, this kind of knowledge, And then, so let's look at that. This in ancient Greek language, very rich language. So, what we just use the word knowledge in English to say or to signify, it is well distinguished, in Greek language, at least in the ancient Greek language. So we have these 5 ways. There may be others, but these 5 ways. So this to enable us to understand the kind of knowledge that Sophia is. That the kind of knowledge, the philosophical knowledge, the kind of knowledge that philosophers, love or desire or seek or investigate. So the first of all, there is techne. Techne, that's what techne is from the Greek word, from the root techne we get technology, technique, technical. So these have to do with skill or craft-based knowledge. Unfortunately, this is the kind of knowledge that many of us seek today, that many of us desire to have today. All the tech knowledge, in the ancient Greek times, is the lowest in the hierarchy of knowledge, is the lowest. The skill or craft-based knowledge is the lowest. But today, that is what many people want to seek. People want to study or acquire knowledge that is tech-based. Of course, the reasons are obvious. Today we are more prone to having knowledge that are practical, that can solve problems. And if you can have knowledge that solves problems, then you can easily be employable. And then you can easily make money. So that is where we are. So that is why today the tech knowledge, skill or craft-based knowledge is more preferred today. But we have to note that in the hierarchy of knowledge, this is the lowest, the least in the ancient Greek times. Because why the lower class or slave are busy with skilled and craft works, then the elites, they sit down and they philosophize. So they philosophize. They think about ultimate problems, and they debate, they argue, they engage in different kind of argumentation, and they enjoy it. They celebrate knowledge, for that is the highest. So this following technique is episteme. So episteme is simply, the knowledge of how, and that is, so the knowledge of how, if you like, this is the knowledge of the knowledge sought, by the natural sciences, the knowledge that we seek today, in the natural sciences, how to understand this, how to understand that, which is also very important. But in the hierarchy of knowledge in the ancient Greek times, is still not the topmost. But today, science, the natural science, or the natural sciences have become very important. Now, okay, so the third one is knows, which is intuitive knowledge. So there are certain things, for example, when you say, I know I love him, I know I love her, and somebody asks you, how do you know? So this kind of, intuitive, subjective, if you like, knowledge. Or I know God loves me, for example. When somebody says, when a person of faith says, I know God loves me, I mean, how? It's difficult to answer by how. It's very personal experience. That knowledge is so personal to the person. So it is very intuitive. So, which is of a higher level. Okay. So now, after that is phronesis. Phronesis is the knowledge of practical moral life. The knowledge one acquired by, facing the vicissitudes of life, the challenges of life, and still want to be facing the dynamic and the challenges of being a good person, this struggle of trying to be a good person, in trying to be a virtuous person, trying to be, facing the practical existential problems, and then the knowledge one develops by trying to, exist in a real world, in a relationship with others and everything, facing the challenges and difficulties of life, the beauties and the joy of life. Then the person grows with certain kind of knowledge, whereby the person can make practical decisions that are very moral and ethical. So this is now the highest, which today unfortunately people don't take more serious, and that is why it's considered important for us to begin to encourage students to have. That is Sophia, Sophia, however you want to pronounce it. So the knowledge of why, and that is, remember we talk about ultimate causes. So why, as they said, the greatest question is why is there something rather than nothing? Why? The question why. So the knowledge of the ultimate causes of things, that is Sophia. This is the philosophical knowledge. So the philosophical knowledge is the knowledge that we explore or investigate by asking the question, why? Why should, for example, a student in university should ask his or herself, why should I have a university? Why should I study? Why should I go to the university? These are you need to begin to ask that question, why? Why should I do this, not this? So that kind of why question. I know some of my students, sometimes I ask them the question, why? They say, in Chinese, no, why? I said, no. That is the importance of this course, is to begin to challenge you to begin to learn to ask not just others, but ask yourself, why? Why should I do this? Why should I take this course? Why should I do this? Why should I take up this career? Why should I? This is important. And that is the importance of philosophy, is to begin to make us conscious of asking the question, why? And the question why means you want to understand the fundamental reason, the ultimate causes, the ultimate principles, the ultimate reason for something or for an action. So this is the, having understood it, this 5 ways of explaining what we use the word in English knowledge, is to help us to understand when we say philosophia, what the kind of sophia, the kind of wisdom we're talking about, is this wisdom, is a knowledge that is gotten by looking at the why of things.